All right, welcome everyone to Hope in the Storm. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Sean Malone, founder and director of Crisis Response International. I have a good friend with me here, Jarod Richardson. Just got back from Tennessee from the deployment out there. Terrible tornado that really did some terrible devastation at this time of the year, right before Christmas. Just horrible things happened to people. We quickly responded, and but I wanted to bring Jarod on to be able to share some of the stories from the ground, kind of what the team experienced, what you guys saw. And so welcome, Jarod. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so why don't you tell us? So first of all, let me just kind of set the story up. We were having the Cry Christmas party, and we were here in the Fort Mill, South Carolina area. We had people come down from the base.
Yeah, whole
and
team.
About halfway through the Christmas party, we found out that these tornadoes, all of our phones, we began to get alerts on them. And our team quickly gathered, pulled to the side, and boom, we had a deployment. And people sprung into action. People were like, I'm going. And people started changing plane tickets.
Right.
People were willing to drive hours back to the base to go pick up gear.
Yep.
And then Jarod said, hey, I'm willing to go. And that's how we get it done. People are, they volunteer and have the heart to go help people when it really counts. And this one really significantly counted. So tell me, Jarod, what did you experience out there?
Absolutely amazing. Just the providence of the Lord going before us, and just meeting these people at the exact right time. We were in the right place. I can't just can't emphasize enough that the Lord had prepared the way before us, and touched a lot of lives, touched a lot of hearts, cleaned up a few yards, but it was absolutely amazing.
So, typically when we go out on deployment, we're trying to meet the physical needs of people, whether that's cooking meals, whether that's debris removal, chainsaw, tarping roofs. It really just depends on the disaster itself. So on this deployment, what were you guys primarily focusing on needs-wise?
Initially it was cleaning up yards and that type of thing, but it came, the Clarksville is just an amazing military town. Lots of veterans, and they just jumped in, and that stuff got cleaned up pretty fast. The rest of it was spending time. Probably the bulk of our time was spent searching for special belongings for families of the deceased. And just going through, sorting through people's lives, and it's so vulnerable. Just all your stuff's just out there in a field that where houses used to stand, and just processing. They'd give us a list of a few items, neighbors coming out, and just searching for possessions. But in that, the chaplaincy work that comes up. I mean, that's the reason the Lord has us there. I firmly 100% believe. Just help people walk through this aspect of trauma.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, specifically, so for those of you who don't know, we have responders, cry responders, who are those who are willing to deploy. They'll go in and they'll cook the food, and we'll muck out homes, tarp roofs, what we call responding to a deployment, responding to a disaster. But then we also have specially skilled and trained people who are chaplains, who really go to a kind of deeper level with people and know how to, we train everybody in basic levels of that, but then we have chaplains who are really kind of like the ninjas, who really know how to listen to people. That's a real big key, but talk to people and let them debrief. But I've been out there before on a deployment like that. I think it was a tornado, might have even been in the Tennessee area, where, they're so sudden. They happen so quickly, so catch people off guard. I think that's why they're, partly why they're so traumatic. Not like a hurricane where you're watching the thing come in for days, you're boarding up your house, maybe you're packing up, key possessions. Tornadoes on you in seconds. And, next thing you know, your whole life is out in the yard, or even scattered hundreds of yards, or some cases half a mile away. And it sounds like a small need to meet. Somebody needs an entire new home, but we're there right away. And so, to serve somebody, the honor to
Oh,
be able to
man.
come along somebody, serve somebody in
The-
that way, and go find like
Yeah.
wedding rings and pictures and keepsakes. It's huge.
The reality of just being there in that moment. There's no deeper ministry that I know of when to touch somebody in the midst of their trauma and to just be there when they're ready to start processing it. And being the ears that get to listen to them go through it, and just giving them the gentle nudges throughout that process.
Yeah.
It is a special place that the Lord lets us interact with them at that level.
Yeah, for sure. Just thinking back over, past deployments, where these types of things. I remember, it was actually in Tennessee. It was in the Cleveland, Tennessee area. A particular deployment showed up, and I had untrained volunteers with me from the local church that we were working alongside of. That's typically what we'll do. We'll try and partner with a church on the ground. That's what we love to do, is just come in, make the church shine.
Right.
We're not going to be there long term,
Yeah.
but the church is typically, caught in a state of confusion. Maybe they have, lost family members in their congregation. We come alongside of them. We know the deployment operations, how to take, work orders, and then how to send teams and, actually meet the needs and, make the church shine and all of that. But I remember going out to this one particular house. I tell this story during one of our trainings, a guy by the name of Mikey, and, it was just a foundation of his house left. That was it.
Yeah, I saw
What do you say in that moment where somebody's lost everything? What do you do? It's one of the things we train people to do, but listening, just the ministry of presence, just to be there with somebody, and the honor that God would allow us. That's the thing that always strikes me, that God would allow us to be there for that person in their worst moment. I just get the fear of the Lord about that. But and it's a lot of just listening. It's just listening to what people have to say. They have to process their story hundreds of times. It's their process of healing. So
yeah. I mean, there's one incident that just kind of stands out in my mind where, sometimes you feel like you're doing the most benign tasks. Like there's a family we were working with. Their roof had been blown off. So half of their roof had been blown off, and we're in there trying to help them move their stuff out before the rain comes. We got rain coming in that weekend, and we're just trying to get them moved out. And I'm talking to the lady of the house, and she was like, I'm just standing here going from room to room. I'm starting tasks. I can't finish them. And just having that moment to be able to look at them and say, hey, you're in shock right now. You just need to know that. Like, your body's having a response.
Helpful.
Right. And her daughter came in there while I was talking to her, and I said, right now, and I just described it back to her, like she was giving me a brief description, but I was like, you're actually starting things, you can't finish them. You're trying to pack, you'll go into the kitchen, you'll say, I'm ready to pack up, and you'll start to pack, and then the next thing you know, you're in the bedroom searching for something random. And it's just that trauma response in the body, and just walking through her with that and saying, that's why we're here. That's what we do. Everybody here's had a background check. We're going to pack you up. We're going to get you down the road. And, we're going to get you set up on that next house. Yeah. And she broke out crying so many times just at the blessing of having people there to process through everything with her. She just couldn't believe, like, she knew she couldn't do it. She literally just didn't have it on board anymore. Yeah. And
we call that normalizing.
Right.
And so, in our chaplaincy training, we cover this in basic training, but, to let somebody know that they're having a normal reaction, whether that be physiological, mental, emotional, to just let them know, hey, you're having a really normal response to an abnormal situation. Oh my goodness, to stabilize them in that moment, just to let them know that. Because, I think back of, being on the ground at 9/11 post, the towers coming down, ground zero. I was having all sorts of physical, emotional responses. And somebody finally came up to me and said, that's really normal. You've been through a lot, and it's okay. And in that moment, I realized, okay, good. I'm not going crazy. I'm not losing my mind.
Right.
Incredibly helpful.
They just started laughing, and they were like, "Oh my, okay, we're good. All right,
Yeah.
we're not lost. This is okay."
Wow.
You know.
Wow.
So-
Well, tell me one of the stories, maybe one of the ways that you saw God show up, or, maybe a tender moment for you or the team, and, what we got to
Yeah.
experience there on the ground.
Yeah. In the process of just looking for projects to get started on, where are we going to plug in? Who are we gonna help out here? We had there's so many stories. Excuse me.
I know it's hard to pick
it-
one from a
it's just
deployment. It's like a loaded question. Like, are you
Shuffling
kidding
through
me?
the cards in my mind as we talk about this. The chaplaincy ministry of we're helping people go through their possessions of deceased loved ones, and working through just this piles of debris. I mean, we're like off in fields looking for some special. There's one that just strikes my heart. There was a baby blanket that a 10-year-old boy he'd passed away, but that was the blanket he came home from the hospital in, and we spent forever looking for this blanket. But just as these family members would show up at the house and process, like, just to have chaplaincy workers there, the majority of us, the 90% of us were just heads down doing the work, and being quiet and just trying to be respectful of their moment of grief. But just having that one chaplain that we can nudge into position to be there and to help them process. I mean, we happened to land at the time on most of these where they were just coming out of the states of shock, and all of a sudden they're able to process. They want somebody to process, and just having somebody there with just an open ear and just we had some great mother types on this one, and who you guys are, but just some fantastic chaplains that could just wrap their arms around that people would just start grieving, and that process would begin, and it was an amazing honor to be there in those moments.
Wow, really powerful.
Yeah,
really powerful. I know. Out at that guy Mikey's house, all I could do is, I wasn't on this deployment. We were behind the scenes, but that particular deployment, we had worked out at this guy's house all day. He had lost his 6-month-old son and his sister in the tornado. The sister tried to protect the baby, picked the baby up out of the crib, and they were throwing 300 yards. It was terrible, devastating. And we were just trying to collect belongings, and right before we left the house, it was getting dark. There's no power. It was a half-mile wide tornado. And we said, Mikey, we got to leave. Is there anything else we can do for you? And he said, yeah, there's this step that I'm looking for on the back of the house. And a couple of weeks earlier, they had all painted their feet, the mother and the wife and the 2 kids, and then the baby's footprint was on the bottom step. And he said, I found the actual set of steps off the back deck that we painted our feet, but the base step that the baby Chase's footprint was on got thrown somewhere, and I can't find it.
Yeah.
And I would never recommend doing this, but I felt an unction from the Lord, and I just said, that's why we're here,
Right.
And so we prayed, and 30 seconds later, somebody jumped head first into this big pile. Their feet were dangling out of the top of this like 10-foot pile of debris, and they had the sign up above their the step up above their head.
Wow.
And he goes, I found the sign, and the joy that it brought to Mikey,
Yeah.
and a local artist ended up making a little display at the church with the steps suspended and, baby footprints down around the front of it.
Right.
And when congregants from the church, because everybody was mourning the loss of this baby, including the family, and so they used that as a display, and it brought healing. And
Right.
so, sometimes people think, well, couldn't you be doing more out there? Like, what could be more than what's
What
more
can be
important
more?
than to the homeowner
What
in that
can be
morning?
more?
in that moment to help them in their healing
Absolutely.
journey. And we're equipped and we're prepared. We'll do anything on deployment to serve the people who have lost so
Right.
much. But
Right.
really, what's on the Lord's heart in that moment, and how can we best serve that person? And that's what you guys were able to do out there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you run chainsaws, you help people move things around, you dig through debris, you do all of that stuff, but it all comes down to that moment of like where you connect with the people. You're there for the people. You're not there to move a branch. That's
Right.
that's not that's not the ticket.
Right.
You're moving you're moving hearts closer to Jesus. That's the whole game.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can hear it in your voice when you tell that story. You don't say the 6-month-old boy. You say baby Chase, and like there's a heart connection
Yeah.
in that at that moment that I identify with that. Just like there's a name for 3 different houses.
Yeah.
That rings in my heart as we
Tell us about
these
those.
things.
Tell us about the people who lost their lives, the people that you guys connected with, and what was really hard.
Yeah, there's a probably the biggest one is Arlen. He was a 10-year-old boy, and that just that really hits. And we were there. The family had actually been there and through the house, and our understanding was that they weren't coming back, and we were just looking for pieces that they could use in the memorial service, and everything from his Lakers gear to his shoes and any type of clothing that might have been his, that type of thing, just to hand over to the family. But what we didn't know is that Arlen's parents were divorced, and that his dad had not stopped by yet and seen the place. So we were unexpectedly visited by Arlen's dad, his biological dad, and he'd come in and he just broke down in the midst of it all. And it's just
Oh, wow.
such a traumatic like now the trauma's real, like he's feeling it. It feels like fiction. It's like
Right.
it's not real, but then he pulls up on that site and you can just see basically the site looked like 2 houses had been picked up, stirred together, and dumped in between the 2 foundations of the property, and it was just nothing but a pile of rubble. And our chaplains were able to just meet him there in his grieving, actually him and his father, so Arlen's dad and his grandfather, and just we feel like that was a big piece of why we were there, is just to be there and connect with his family, and also our chaplains that went to the service. Those 2 were pretty much on their own there at that service.
So you guys went to the funeral.
Yeah, we had 4 of our chaplains go to the funeral.
Wow.
Yeah.
I heard reports too that the chaplains that were there, people from the community, extended family members said, "Hey, wait a minute, aren't you those people that were out the property helping pick up items and wait a minute, you came to this?" Guys, I can't explain to you, like, hey, we want to be able to do more. We want to train. We want to mobilize more people. We want to be able to give out the most amount of resources, help the most amount of people. But the heart posture of every cry responder when we go out there is that we're there for one person, and it's worth it just to help one person through that. And oftentimes we'll come away from a deployment or a day on the deployment, like today was all about that guy. Today was all about this person. Or sometimes a deployment, it was just, for you personally, it was all about me going and meeting that one person.
Yeah. I'd say for all 16 of those responders who were out there in the field, they had their one, and that's why you go to find your one.
Wow, that's really powerful. Well, Jarod, I want to say thank you so much for going. I know we could probably tell stories for hours, about this. We just finished a debrief call. We talked about the deployment, but it's just good. We wanted to just share a little bit of the insights of the deployment, share a few stories, and then just connect with you guys, just kind of fill you guys in behind the scenes, like this is what it looks like to deploy with us. And if you're watching this video and this is of interest to you, maybe you want to become a chaplain, maybe you want to deploy with Cry, maybe you know how to run chainsaws, or you want to serve food, or you know how to cook food. There's so many different opportunities for people to serve. I say it all the time. There's a place for everybody to serve in the midst of a disaster. Yes. Like on a deployment, you just think, well, it's the guy out there with the chainsaw. There's like 10 other people doing 10 other things, right? I mean, what are
Right.
some of the functions on
Right.
deployment? How would you invite people to this?
Yeah, so there's everything from walking down the street, connecting with people who've just been through everything and just helping them process trauma or find that next project where we're going to be, removing tree and debris removal, or help somebody move through their house and process their belongings. There's tons of room for people who are just people connectors. There's tons of room for people who who can help tarp a roof, who are not afraid of heights. There's a room for those guys who know how to run a chainsaw. If you do it, there's a place for it. The cooking food, sitting down and having meals with folks.
Yeah. Just listening to stories.
Listening to people's story. I mean, I think that's a huge piece of what we do is you stop and you talk to them and you just ask, were you here when this happened?
And then boom.
And
that's
then you
it.
just listen.
Yep,
You
that's
just
it.
listen.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So get trained. You can go online, take our training, become a volunteer. That's how you volunteer with Cry. You become a Cry responder by taking online training. We have a bunch of different advanced trainings, and we also have live trainings as well, both basic and advanced. You can also host us. But anyway, we just want to say thank you, everybody, for your prayers. Everybody out there that was praying for these teams. This is one of the guys you were praying for. And thank you for continuing to pray for the families out there. Like, we're back home. The deployment's over. The capacity of what we were able to do in the field in terms of volunteers, the resources that we had, and the work that was available on the ground. But this is just the beginning for these families, and it's a long road for them. So continue to pray for them. And again, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. And maybe we'll see you out there in the field.
Yeah, and really quick, all those responders who were out there who went along this trip with me, man, you guys were fantastic. It was a fantastic team, and I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you. You're near and dear to my heart, and you're near and dear to the Lord's heart.
They're the heroes of Cry. It's the people
it.
who stand up, volunteer, and go do this. It's completely inconvenient. It'll cost you something. It'll happen, when
You don't sleep all that well.
Yeah. All of the ducks aren't going to be in a row. I hear people say this all the time. Well, maybe in 10 years I'll be able to do this when this, and this. Like, it doesn't work like that, you know? You could go for a weekend and go do this. And, for churches, there's a great way for churches to plug into headline news, things that are relevant and important and urgent, national, international crisis situations. We come in, we train entire churches to be able to do this. You don't have to recreate the wheel. And you could do it with your values. We don't hide Jesus out there either. So, anyway, so that's enough of us, guys. God bless you. Hope you have a great day. Thank you, Jarod. Thank you guys for joining into another Hope in the Storm video. God bless.